A flash of cerulean blue in the Australian bush signifies one of several birds: kingfishers, fairy wrens, occasionally a turquoise parrot. But when it's going into the nectivorous flowers, you can almost be certain that this is a blue-faced honeyeater. And the blue face is two-tone. As I mentioned, there is cerulean at the top and cobalt blue at the bottom. Other markings are the black cap, the white line going under the face, the bib on the chest, which is dark, the greenish back. Then on the nape of the neck there is a band, a white band, running to the nape from the head. The blue covering the face is on a featherless area, and taxonomically, with the bare area on the face and the nape band, this bird was thought to be closely related to another group of honeyeaters called the Melithreptus. And the Melithreptus mostly have a nape band and a bare area around the eye, usually carunculated. But the size of the featherless carunculated area about the eye in the Melithreptus is much smaller than this entire face region that we are seeing in the blue-faced honeyeater. Blue-faced honeyeaters, like most honeyeaters, are flock-orientated birds, feeding, drinking and bathing as a group. The largest group that I've seen where all the birds are displayed at one time is 8 birds. Sometimes when feeding, particularly in bushes like this Calothaminus, the blueface are more heard than visualised. In this video clip, only 3 of the birds are seen. There is a symbiotic relationship between the honeyeaters and the Australian flowering blossom. The birds have to get in along the stamen to get in to where the nectar resides, for these birds are addicted to sugar. The bill of a blue-faced honeyeater relative to other honeyeaters is larger, more suited for hunting for insects under the bark, but it is a typical honeyeater addicted to the nectar of the Australian bush. And to compensate for the large bill, it also has a long tongue, and on these freeze frames you can see the tongue with its multiple filamentous tips for soaking up nectar. It's most fascinating watching these beautiful birds get the nectar. They move over the individual blossoms, spreading pollen, helping to maintain genetic diversity within the flora. They usually move on when disturbed, either from the call of a mate or aggressive behaviour, usually from another honeyeater. The blue-faced honeyeater is probably the favourite honeyeater of many Australians, but it extends beyond Australia up into PNG. Here the blueface is on a Gymea lily, and in Queensland they often go to similar flowers on the banana tree. Sometimes when they go to these large flowers they are not after nectar, but the insects that go to them. As mentioned, the blueface has a large bill, and look at this bird. As it goes underneath the bark, arachnids form a large part of its diet. Though considered as nectivorous birds, the blue-faced probably eats more insects and arachnids than many other honeyeaters. As mentioned, the blue-faced honeyeater is a popular honeyeater, but some are repulsed by it because of the bare skin, equating it to the carrion-eating birds like vultures. But the feathers are absent in the blue-faced honeyeater for one reason: to show off that magnificent smurf-like blue face. But we always think of children as being more adorable, but in the blue-faced honeyeater, it has a lime green face, losing its smurf appearance. I suspect it takes 12 months for the green face to turn blue, for these immature birds are often still present at the beginning of the next breeding season. The habitat of the blue-faced honeyeater is open woodlands. They are found in higher densities in the subtropical and tropical areas of northern Australia. In the southern latitudes, it is unusual to see a blue-faced honeyeater in winter, so they have a latitudinal shift from the south to the north in winter. The northern birds are far more sedentary. But like all honeyeaters, finding them in the same spot year-round is unlikely, for all honeyeaters follow the seasonality of blossom. Here in the Kimberley, this blue-faced honeyeater eating at the top of this giant grevillea takes off, and we will freeze the shot of the underwings, for there are two subspecies. The underwing has enormous contrast, dark with white. On the eastern side of Australia, the blue-faced honeyeater has a pink area going between the dark and the white. So the Kimberley bird is often referred to as the white blue-faced honeyeater. There is one further subspecies of the blue-faced honeyeater, and that is found in Cape York. It's virtually identical to what we are looking at now, but a smaller bird. The blue-faced honeyeater is in its own genus, Entomyzon. This is a combination of Greek and Latin, which always is rather confusing, but ento is like entomology or insect, and myzon, the Latin component, implies a slit-like opening, as is prominent on the blue-faced honeyeater's bill. This is the nostril. The species name Cyanotis, again from the Greek, means cyan for blue, otis for ear, for most of the blue is behind the eye or in the ear area. Just watch this blue-faced shimmer. This usually implies that there is a dominant bird around about, which it should give way to, and it is just behind the tree. When bluefaces are in the canopy of a tree without blossom, they are usually gleaning for insects. And one minute insect that they do like is the sugar-coated lurk, often seen as little white dots on the leaves. So when rustling through the leaf canopy, this is often what they are after. When it comes to bathing, many honeyeaters dive into the water. And as mentioned, bathing is one of the group activities, like here at Cobbold Gorge in the Savannah Gulf country of far western Queensland. Some birds just carefully walk into water, never going too deep. But here the blue-faced honeyeaters dive, just skimming the top surface water. They are a bit too far for an accurate ID, but this is the western subspecies, the white-wing or albipennis. And this subspecies, from near the Queensland Northern Territory border through to the Kimberley, becomes the dominant subspecies of the north. Another situation at Tambo in central Queensland, where we found these blue-faced honeyeaters and a yellow-throated miner coming in onto the roof, and they were quite domesticated. At the restaurant, they would come down searching for scraps. Whether the miner had educated them to do this or not, I'm uncertain. Compared to the non-urban bushbirds, they were far more tolerant of human activity. Blue-faced honeyeaters have adapted to urbanization, and here in this yard with the grevillea tree, they are feeding on the flower. But the noisy miners aren't too happy about the blue-faced honeyeaters being in their grevillea. They are very possessive birds and territorially defended from any other nectivorous feeders. The noisy miners are far more group orientated than the greater majority of honeyeaters and usually win with sheer numbers. But in this case the blue-faced honeyeater is a bigger bird than the noisy miner. So here in the battle for the nectar the blue-faced win because it is one of the largest of the honeyeaters. As the miners attempt to disrupt them, the blue-faced call continuously, for they are also a group bird. Well, leaving the nectivorous nature of the blue-faced honeyeater, we will now look at the nesting. It is often said that the blue-faced honeyeater will use other birds' nests for breeding, in particular the babblers. But here, in Granite Gorge, again in Queensland, we find the blue-faced honeyeater has its own nest. The only sexual dimorphism between a male and a female is size. The male is slightly bigger. On fledging, the blue-faced honeyeaters have brown, green and yellow, with the absence of blue. The gape in particular is very yellow, and the green is splashed with brown coloration. The bib of the bird is not so much black but more charcoal and smaller in size. Once fledged, the blue-faced honeyeaters are extremely active and seem largely independent. I have personally never seen a blue-faced honeyeater feeding a fledgling, but it must happen, for the young chicks will require a high-protein diet, which means catching insects. On behalf of the Plumes of Oz, thank you for watching this video. We will have further releases of Australian birds in the wild in the near future.